Hi, community group leaders and teachers. I hope y'all are doing well, having a wonderful day. Hey, I'm excited. This week I get to introduce to you the Pastor's Cut. We're looking at John chapter 18. We are looking at an interesting story as Jesus encounters and has a conversation with probably one of the most politically powerful people in and around Jerusalem in the first century world, Pontius Pilate. As he has this conversation with Pilate, it's interesting on multiple levels. One, because Pilate was incredibly bigoted towards Jews in particular, and yet here he is almost sympathetic to Jesus in the conversation. Jesus is also challenging him at every level. You know, how he thinks about leadership, how he thinks about power, how he ultimately thinks about what is absolute truth versus relative truth. And as the conversation progresses, on the one hand, Pilate gets a little more endeared toward Jesus. He's at least sympathetic and wants to let Jesus off the hook. But at the other time, he never embraces Jesus. And so it's interesting. I really hope you have great conversation as you discuss who is Jesus and how does Pilate really wrestle with who is Jesus through the conversation. An interesting story I want to leave you with that may even generate some conversation. A couple of years ago, I stood in line at a Starbucks, waiting to buy a drink, and ended up standing next to a guy, struck up a conversation with, who was from Death Valley, California. Well, the guy was tatted up and down, really big and bulky. He was a biker guy. So I had this conversation with him, and as I'm talking with him about riding his bike, I don't know, where he drops this bomb about religiosity, how he so loves Jesus, and he just had been to Sedona, Arizona. It's the New Age capital of the world. He'd had some crystals just to realign his soul. And so, of course, my ears perked up because he's talking about crystals, he's talking about spirituality, he's talking about Jesus. And so I'm wondering what's going on with him. So I just ask, so tell me a little bit about what you believe, and we start talking. He certainly has some belief in Jesus, but Jesus is not the only way, the only truth, the only life. And the more that we talk together, he just shares his hang-ups that he can't believe that Jesus is the only way, that there's a way that's true for you and a way that's true for me, and it just has to be that way. Well, this 60-year-old man, I'm not going to change his mind in a 5-minute conversation. So I offer to pray for him. And I pray for him, and he really feels this sense of peace as we pray together. But that's still not enough to get him over the edge. And so I walked away thinking, well, I just pray that there was a seed that was sown. But interestingly enough, just like Pilate walked away from Jesus and didn't have his life transformed right then and there, this guy didn't have his life transformed. And I think that's okay. Stats say it actually takes somewhere between 10 and 15 significant spiritual encounters before a person will accept and run after Jesus for the first time. So I hope that as you talk this week, you'll have some great conversations about evangelism, about what it means to share God's love and God's truth with people that are far from God, and that ultimately, as our mission is to help people that are far from God know God and be developed into Jesus followers who then turn around and become difference makers for a world of people far from God, what that looks like and how we can start the process of engaging with people that are far from God in a world that doesn't believe in absolute truth. And so, hey, lots of great points of conversation. Bless you guys as you have some awesome conversations. I pray that God would generate some good fruit this week and that he would inspire everyone in your groups to run closely to him. Blessings.